is good! Ferris State wins the basketball game!
You got it! Game winner!
Rips the shot and it's a score for Ferris State! What a play right there by the Bulldogs!
And so those are the kind of the guys I really wanted to model my mentality after.
When it's bad weather, it kind of comes down to grit. I think our team has a lot of that.
It's like you lose a game, like it hurts so much.
Like we're very culture-based, and so that's what initially got me here.
You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs, brought to you by Ferris State Athletics.
It's number 19 here on Behind the Bulldogs. Brandon Worth alongside Joe Nagy. What's up?
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Great, man.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Life's good.
It is good, isn't it?
Life is great.
It is great. We have a great episode for you today here as we record this on Thursday, a little later in the week, but we wanted to save it because we have a really, really good interview for you guys. Justin Jackson works here at Ferris State.
Oh,
assistant track coach, works in compliance, works with student athlete success. Great interview. You're not going to want to miss it, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But we also got some really nice wins to cover, Joe. I mean, all you can say, 2 words, anchor down.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up about that one. We love to see that for sure. It's going to be a great episode. So let's just get right into it.
Let's do it. But first, we got to give thanks where thanks are due. Big thanks to our sponsor, Car Center in Big Rapids, the area's largest body shop. Find Car Center off Northland Drive in Rogers Heights and online at carcentermi.com. Ferris State Sports Recap will start on the hardwood. Obviously, wins against Davenport. We'll start there. Obviously, dominant wins, men's and women's, able to take care of the Panthers. But especially the one that everyone's talking about. Women's, number 9 in the country, take down number 1 again. They beat
for the second time in the season.
Yeah.
Can you just say the best?
I mean,
when are they going to give us number 1? I mean, I feel like we got to jump up a pretty darn far amount after that.
Yeah, I think we moved up to 7, I want to say, or 6, which
that's it?
I think that's it right now. But unfortunately, that's it. But
I get we've dropped like 1 or 2 games here and there, but like,
we could be a top 5 team.
Yeah, you could easily say you're a top 5 team.
Oh, they have to be, right? I don't know. I'm not a part of the committee of the polls, but all I can say is...
Committee's a bunch of idiots is all I can say.
Whoa,
yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, but seriously, Mallory McCartney, Caden Blanchard went off in that game, and they were especially, both GLAC Player of the Week for a reason. They were key parts in that defense, especially, Joe, I thought played fantastic against Grand Valley. They limited their offense, and they were able to knock down shots at home in front of a packed house, and that's how they got the win.
Yeah, they really held them down too, especially for that 3-point shooting from the Lakers is one that kind of can win them a lot of games, and it's a make or break spot, but able to hold them to 5 makes out of 22 shot attempts is really great to get that percentage down. And I think that's one thing too that gave us a really solid amount of momentum, because you also get the point where we get 27 defensive rebounds, you get 8 on the offensive side, 35 in total. That's one that's going to be able to make it so that way you win games. We did tie in totals, but also, when you see the momentum of being able to put the ball in the basket, we shot 33% from 3, getting 30 points from beyond the arc is just one thing where that momentum swing, especially, being able to get the rebound and then bring it up and just being able to score after that and hold their offense to pretty much stagnant for most of the time. I feel like it's going to be a big reason why this team is going to be really dangerous going into the later part of the season, into that postseason tournament, especially seeing that GV is going to be a team we might be seeing later on.
Absolutely. And speaking of dominance, of course, the men's on the other side, they end up getting the win over the Lakers as well in the doubleheader. 86-73, the final score. Close at half, a little closer than we would have liked. We knew Grand Valley wasn't as strong as a team as we'd seen in a couple years past, but especially, you saw in the second half, the offense pull away.
A little scary.
Might not have been in the stat sheet as dominant as some of the other players, but Jimmy Scholler played an absolutely heck of a ball game. I believe he finished with 8 rebounds, 5 assists to lead the Bulldogs. He didn't necessarily score as many points defensively, though. He was clutch. They made a lot of plays in that second half. Our Bulldog offense did. They were able to throw down some dunks off of some turnovers, and they were able to take care of the basketball much better in the second half, and that made some efficient possessions, and that's what made him score more points, and that's what led him to win this ball game.
Yeah, Ethan Erickson, too, 5 for 9 from 3, able to really hold it down. A lot better shooting, I would say, this game. Grand Valley, too, had the same kind of story as the women's game. Their 3-point shooting was pretty much abysmal. 4 for 24. That's not going to win you any games, and especially getting those rebounds is one thing that's going to be able to change the tides really well. Also, a special shout out to Ben Davidson getting featured on the Grand Rapids Gold Instagram.
Yes,
going 4
did
for
you
4.
see that? That was crazy.
I did. They called him Wendy's because he went 4 for 4. It was kind of clean.
4 for 4. He might as well just get an NIL from Wendy's at this point.
Pretty much.
Come on,
Big
Ben.
Rapids Wendy's, hit him up.
Ben, if you're listening to us, we got a spot for you. We want to hear the story on how you were picked.
We really do.
It's going to be great. But speaking of which, hockey was great as well. Get the sweep. big time, so desperately needed
that
against Lake State.
We needed that.
5-3 win at home. They win in overtime in the Sioux. Offense was much better, and they made big plays down the stretch and in overtime. An absolutely brilliant goal to finish it off.
Don't let the Dogs get hot is all I can say. A little bit late, obviously, with the season going, but I think, especially looking at the points that we have now, if we do well in these next few games and just kind of seeing if we can get some momentum, we'll see how it plays out. We have Augustana, but then we have Bowling Green, Bemidji, and Northern. Not the easiest situation of teams that we got to play, but these are all must-win, at least splitting the series, because big time wins over Bemidji, even Northern and Bowling Green will get us in a spot where we could possibly get to that 7 or 6 spot of the standings in the CCHA, because Tech is right now at 23. Then there's a pretty big drop off between them and Northern Michigan, who's next with 18, and then we're at last at 16. So if we can at least get 3 wins out of this next series of 3 teams, then we'll be able to do pretty solid. And not to mention we have Lake Superior State at the end of the season, but we're going to be in Augustana this weekend, so these games do not count, but momentum-wise, they're must-wins.
Absolutely, and especially in that new barn is going to be sweet. Also, shout out Travis Shouty, defenseman of the week once again, defensive player of the week.
Good team.
He's been fantastic. But also finishing out Ferris State track and field, debuting after a first cancellation, what was supposed to be earlier on the week prior. Get the first meet under their belt in the new year at Saginaw Valley. It was a really nice meet overall there. Doug Hansen, a lot of great performances across the board. Field athlete sprints really had some very nice races, distance as well, had some standouts as well. Really good overall effort from this team. You can tell there's already the energy in the building, and it's going to be an exciting indoor season, especially coming up this weekend. Obviously, we're going to have a big win at Bill Klinger, but I think really the energy, the chemistry has already, I think it's got to be well known that it's improved already with this group from the last year. So it's starting to improve, and it's certainly just going to make this a much cool and looking forward to season upcoming from indoor track and field, especially going into outdoor, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, as we have assistant coach as well as compliance and student success coordinator Justin Jackson joining us. And boy, you guys are going to love this interview, Joe. So without further ado,
let's shoot it on over to the interview. Now joining us in studio is Justin Jackson. I'm not going to say your actual title because it's too long for me to I can't even remember it at this point, but what's your actual title, just to let people know?
Yeah, I'm the Compliance and Student Athlete Success Coordinator here.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you guys had some time to keep me here. It's
absolutely, awesome. Yeah. And you've obviously now, I believe you just mentioned 8 months now, you've officially been here. I mean, coming from Florida, coming from Ohio, how's it been here in Michigan so far?
Not bad, man. You know, I'm from a big city. You know, growing up in Miami was quite an experience, and I had a really good time doing that. And got a cool opportunity to run track in Nova Southeast University in Fort Lauderdale. So was really accustomed to the way that the weather was down there. But Ohio, I would say, gave me a small prep for what was gonna come. But I've liked my time here. You know, Big Rapids is a really interesting town that has a lot of love for this university. And it's cool to be a part of that and see how we can kind of affect the community in a positive way. And obviously, you know, if we're winning, it's always positive. If we're not, then, you know, we got to answer to some people. But yeah, it's been cool. I've really enjoyed it, and I really like, you know, being a Bulldog right now. It's a cool time.
For
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. How has that journey been? You know, going from Florida, then Ohio, then Michigan. What kind of steps were in place for you to take to get to where you are now, and just kind of talk us through that journey, like just kind of going from step by step?
Yeah, so I ran the 400, 200, I did triple jump, long jump, and high jump when I was in undergrad, and it was cool. You know, I think, you know, track gave me a really cool opportunity to do something special in college. So I really enjoyed that, and being a collegiate athlete kind of opened my mind to working in that space. My mom works at the University of Miami and has for some time now, and I think seeing her do what she does within student development kind of sparked that fire within me, and got to do some cool stuff at Nova while I was there in the student development space, working with SAC. So was in that area and thought, hey, this could be a cool career. So I went to Ohio University to get a dual master's in sports administration and business administration, which is a really, really great program. You know, I'll always be a Bobcat with the way that we got to do stuff and the things that we got to do. So that was really cool. And I think I have one of the interesting and rare stories of getting a job off of job search board. It doesn't happen very often in collegiate athletics because a lot of the times when people post jobs, they already know who they want to hire for them.
Right.
But Ferris being in such an interesting position of trying to be innovative and get young people in this department and kind of change how they want to do things has kind of led the way for some of us to do those things. And I was lucky enough to be one of them. So yeah, found the job on NCAA Marketplace and just applied during my time of just trying to throw out a bunch of applications and getting rejected by big schools. Because not a lot of big places want a 24-year-old to come in and change some things up. But yeah, so I had a really great interview over Zoom and then came up here. And we just kind of walked through what those decisions were going to be and how that role would shape out and what kind of things I was going to do. And within that time, I got an opportunity to talk about what the track situation was looking like, and they needed a sprint coach, and you know, I kind of fit the bill. So it was a cool kind of coincidental situation of getting to find myself in a position to make change within our department and really affect our student athletes in a positive way, but also give a new experience to our track athletes as well.
For sure. And obviously you work with compliance, one, and then student success with the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And then you're also a coach at the same time. I'm sure everybody's wondering, how in the world do you fit that all in one day?
Yeah, it's an interesting balance of schedule. I think it's really about prioritizing, right? With compliance, it's all very circumstantial, right? So there are times of the year that are really busy. Our signing days, you know, things in the summer, trying to get scholarships together and making sure all of our athletes have what they need before they get here. But you know, just making sure that we're doing what is important at the time. So whether it's, you know, certification at the beginning of the year, or beginning of a semester, or if it's getting community service hours in on the student development piece, or if it's practice, you know, so it's really just about making sure I'm doing what the group needs from me, and making sure that we get that stuff done. So communication is a really big part of it. Luckily for me, I don't have to do all of it every day. Like some days are compliance heavy, some days are student development heavy, but I've been able to kind of find a good balance, just kind of doing stuff with Sarah Hagley, my boss, and you know, Steve has been phenomenal in allowing me to grow and do what I need to do in the space just to make it work and have all my schedules kind of align in a way that works best for me. So it is a balance of time management, but at the same time, just prioritization is huge.
And you mentioned being from Miami and then now coming to Big Rapids. The biggest difference is the size. What have you enjoyed so far about living in small town USA when compared to from where you're from and stuff like that?
Dude, it takes 3 seconds to get anywhere. That's gotta be the best, right? Like I live like maybe 8 minutes from here, and most days it takes me 5, right? So in the summer when a lot of people aren't here, it takes even less time, but it's really interesting. Like everything is exactly as far as you think it is. Like if something is 15 miles away, you'd be there in 15 minutes. Yeah. But in Miami, it's a whole different ballgame. Like my high school was, I think, like 6.5 miles from my house. It took me 35 minutes to get there every day. Jeez. So it's just like that I think is the biggest advantage. And everyone's a lot nicer. Everyone's a lot nicer here. Like it's just, there's a community feel, and like everybody's just kind of looking out for one another. Miami is a little dog eat dog, and you know, it's interesting, but you know, I think being a part of that space has kind of built a nice callus of not really worrying about too many things on a day-to-day basis and kind of just letting things roll off your shoulder, which, you know, in a small town, I think that's super helpful because, you know, there's not as many obstacles that roll in on a day-to-day basis that could, you know, throw off my day in any way, shape, or form. But I do think that the small town, I understand why people like being over here and being in this small area for sure.
Absolutely. And really kind of backing up, obviously some of our listeners don't necessarily have the background in athletics. Compliance, what does that necessarily mean, as well as how it correlates with student athlete success? And really, how do you help with the Bulldog athletes in that regard?
Certainly, yeah. So compliance is really all of the management and oversight of the NCAA rules, and making sure that our coaches, staff, and student athletes are abiding by those rules, and also providing, you know, proper education within those spaces, because there's a lot of them. You know, there's a bunch of bylaws and things and jargon that sounds very legal, and I have very little background in that. But I think that, the more you get accustomed to it and the more you read and the more you find yourself in random situations, you learn a lot really quickly. So that's in a nutshell what compliance is and how it works. And it ties in nicely to student development because I kind of get every side of what the student athlete experience looks like now. Being a student athlete, it doesn't really affect you as much until you find yourself in a negative situation when it comes to compliance. But I think being able to look at it from the lens of student athlete development has been really cool because now I get to look at the rule book as an opportunity to help rather than kind of create guidelines for our department, right? Like I get to look at stuff and say, well, the rules say this, but let's see what we can do with this. How can we leverage this to our advantage and make sure that we are within these lines, but kind of operating more in a gray rather than a black and white. But I think a big thing with compliance is like operating in the black and white because we have to kind of keep some things in check. There's a lot of stuff in there that says that this is permissible, this isn't permissible, and there isn't a lot of room in some of those spaces. But I think a big thing that me and Sarah like to do is focus on what can we do to leverage this for our student athletes and make sure that we get in the best experience possible. But yeah, compliance has always had kind of like a darker or tough connotation with it, just because we're the ones that got to send in violations. We're the ones that got to make sure that everybody's doing what they got to do. And anytime that you're in that role, it's easy to be perceived as the bad guy. But at the end of the day, like I really enjoy being a part of that space because I think we get to do really cool stuff whenever we get the opportunity to do so. And I get to talk to some cool people as well.
Absolutely. And there's one gripe that I have, obviously, with what you guys kind of do. As a cross-country athlete, I think the most commonly signed form that I've ever done is concussion forms. Why do we have to sign so many concussion forms?
You can blame football and hockey for that.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
It's just an umbrella then.
Yeah, just making sure we're covering our bases. It's important that we kind of make sure everyone gets the same information. But yeah, there are a lot of forms. Like our meetings at the beginning of the year always get long. We got I think it's 14 forms for returners, like 17 forms for new athletes. It's a lot. It's always good to knock out at the beginning of a year, but it can be taxing and it's tough. But it's one of those things. Cover the department, make sure we're doing all the things that we got to do.
For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, making sure you're following all the rules. Then now with track season coming up, I mean, when you get a chance to kind of kick back and relax, even before this kind of busy season starts, what do you find yourself doing when you maybe got a Saturday free or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, like most people that work in athletics, I'm a big sports guy. So, when we're in season for the NFL or NCAA football, I'm always up on that. I'm a huge Heat fan. My dad works for the Miami Heat, so it's kind of been a big part of our life. So I'm watching Heat games, whether they're weekday games or on the weekends. But outside of the sports space, big anime guy. Just got into it maybe like about a year ago. Okay. My brother introduced me, and I think I just love the storytelling and a lot of the animation is cool. So get into that. Do some very mediocre gaming here and there. I'm terrible at Madden, so I hope no one tries to challenge me at that. But I can give people some work in Mortal Kombat. We can do that. That I got some skills in.
What animes you rocking with? Like Hunter x Hunter, like Attack on Titan? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I got a quick list from one of my friends in undergrad of here's your starter animes. These will suck you in. This is the stuff that'll really get you going. And I was like, okay, let's see. Started with Hunter x Hunter, loved it. I just finished Demon Slayer 2 weeks ago. Love it. I'm really up on these characters that are all about just figuring it out. No matter what the situation is, Gon and Tanjiro are my guys. It's just they kind of embody the spirit that I think I've had for a long time. I was never the best athlete. I was never the naturally talented kid. But through a lot of hard work, I ended up being in the space that I was and am now. And I think the stories of that have always resonated with me the most, and being able to see them in a space of fantasy and these people with abilities and powers and stuff like that. It just kind of amplifies the story in a really cool way. So I really like those two. Attack on Titan, I'm halfway through. It just ended, right? Did they just wrap it up?
That. I think we're in season 4 right now.
Yeah, I think it's wrapping up. I think it's done now. I can't remember, but I think it's done now. But my brother finished that. And then for the older crowd, there's a new one that came out on Netflix. It's definitely R-rated, so I just want to put that disclaimer out for sure. It's called The Blue-Eyed Samurai, and it's a phenomenal story. It's like about this female samurai in like 1688 Japan, where like it was like outlawed for anyone who wasn't Japanese to be in Japan, and she was I think a child of a white man that was in there and is like shunned by the community, and she's just like on a path of revenge, and it's just like she just went and trained and did all of her training by herself, stuff like that. So it's a really cool story, but it's very important that I emphasize that this is not something children should be in this space of watching. If you are the faint of heart, especially in the gore space, you also shouldn't watch it. So I wanted to make sure that
solid disclaimer.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure everyone knows what the story looks like.
Duly noted. But before we obviously go, we'll touch on the track part a little bit. Obviously, in season, indoor, outdoor coming around the corner as well. Just from your group, obviously sprints and jumps. I mean, really, how much are you looking forward to the rest of this indoor season, especially going into outdoor with the group you got?
Yeah, I'm pumped. And you know, Brett, you can tell. I mean, you can tell. You're at the meets with me, man. Like I eat, sleep, and breathe track and field. Man.
Energy guy, big time.
Yeah, I love it, man. Like just
vibes guy.
Any way that we can get people pumped up and ready to go is what my MO is. And we've had a lot of really cool things happen so far, and we're a little past halfway. And you know, we've had some really big PRs. We got some guys and girls in some really, really good positions. Everyone ran really well last week. I'm really excited, looking forward to tomorrow or Friday. And I think we're in a position to do some things that people aren't really expecting from Ferris. You know, we've had some struggles in the sprint and jump space in the past, and I think filling that void from a coaching perspective has been really helpful for some of these guys and girls in this group. But I mean, there's a lot of good things to say about this group and what we got going. You know, the energy is good. Coach Kelcher's bought in. I feel like everybody in every group is really bought in. And last week, one thing I said to Coach was, it really felt like everybody wanted to win. And that's a feeling that's really nice to have on a track team, because that thought process is so rare because you win so rarely, right? So being able to feel that energy and kind of push that along through the team, whether that's through supporting each other in our events, making sure everyone knows what everyone's running and how we're doing things and why we're doing things. You know, anything that I can do to kind of get them in that space is what is big for me. And I'm even more pumped for outdoor. You know, everybody runs faster outside than they do inside. So we got some really, really good times. We got some kids blazing right now, but I'm excited for what the future looks like. And I think that we're going to be in a really, really good space.
For sure.
Absolutely. And Justin, thank you so much for coming on. Last question for you. We ask everybody, what's been your favorite thing about being a Ferris State Bulldog?
I think it's the amount that everybody hates GV. Like, I think I was not prepared to come into an area that had a rivalry that was that strong, especially considering it being a D2 school and like me being a D2 athlete at the same time. Like we didn't have that. Like I didn't have like a rival, you know, my school certainly didn't have one. We tried to pretend that like Barry was our rival just because they were in the same area. But like, I haven't really felt that before. And I got an opportunity to go to the football game that was at GV, both of them. And I was at the basketball game this past weekend, and like just that energy is phenomenal. So obviously there's some bad blood. There's a little bit of respect there in the fact that it's been going on for so long. But being a part of an environment that can get so hype, so intense, so fun, so quickly has been super cool. And it's cool to be a part of that. And, you know, not being from this area, I don't necessarily have that. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, you know, should I really feel this way? Should I be doing it? But the energy has been pumped into me over the last 8 months. And I think that it's really cool to be a part of something like that. And, you know, in certain circumstances, being on the right side of that has been really, really, really fun.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck this weekend.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Before we go, we'll hit you with a quick Ferris State Sports slate. Joe, start us off with Thursday.
Yeah, for sure. Women's basketball is going to be tipping off against Wayne State, 5:30 p.m. Men's basketball right after 7:30 p.m. against the Warriors.
Yes, Friday, indoor track and field. Bill Klinger Classic at Grand Valley starts at noon. Hockey at the new barn over in Augustana in South Dakota. 8:07 puck drop there from South Dakota.
Massive plate of sports happening on Saturday. Women's basketball is going to be against Saginaw Valley State. 1 o'clock tip-off. Men's basketball immediately after that one at 3 o'clock. And then men's ice hockey is wrapping up the doubleheader against Augustana in their brand new barn, 7:07 puck drop.
Yes, and Sunday to finish it all out, women's tennis traveling to face the Eagles of Eastern Michigan University, 2 o'clock first serve there from Ipsy. But that's going to do it. Until next time.
Take care, everybody.